Hi, I'm Gary Gulman, and I'm Jake Hogan's guest today on Don't Be Alone with the aforementioned Jake Hogan. And I'm not heeding this advice, don't be alone with him. I'm essentially alone with Jake Hogan, and I'm looking forward to it.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Hello, welcome to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I am Jake Hogan, and this is my podcast where I get interesting people to talk about my problems and work it out for me. Hopefully we can grow closer in the process, which would be awesome. I just want to say that it's nice to have a podcast. And finally, I think you all know that we are having a moment here at Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. The show is really taking off, and I'm very grateful for all the positive comments and suggestions and the questions that you're sending into dbawjk@gmail.com. Please send me your questions, especially the questions I can ask my guests. But it's been great, and I got a lot of attention. I don't have any numbers to back that up, that there are a lot of people listening or watching, but I walk into places and they stare at me, say like, "You look like you have a podcast." And I go, "Yeah, I do." And I take that as a great compliment. Also, I don't want to say anything, but I believe my influence is growing. I got a letter, and I swear this is true, from President Joe Biden asking for my help to get him reelected. And he said that anything I can do will help. So if a guy's asking me for help, I clearly have expanded my influence to be much greater than I thought. I mean, even Washington, D.C., amazing. So Joe, I appreciate it. I'm not that easy. You can't just ask me for help and I'm not going to give you my approval yet. I want to see what all the candidates has to say before I dive in completely into the Joe Biden camp. You know what I'm saying? Let me be fair to all the others. But, you know, I'm leaning towards you, Joe. Today, I have a great guest. Friend of mine. His name is Gary Gulman. He's a comedian, very, very funny guy. He's got a recent comedy special called Born on Third Base, which is fantastic. He had one a little while ago called The Great Depresh, about his depression. That was a documentary about him plus his stand-up, which is great. He just wrote a book called Misfit, which is about his childhood and cuts back and forth between his depression and his childhood. When I was reading his book, his sort of lonely, sad childhood of being kind of a soft mama's boy really resonated with me. And I wanted to ask him about that because he was kind of a latchkey kid. He came home and his mom worked and he kind of had to deal with life on his own for many, many hours of the day. I too was a latchkey kid in that way. I would come home and there would be nobody home and I would have to fend for myself. And I got to really fend for myself because I could eat anything I wanted and nobody would complain. I could, boil macaroni and cheese in the middle of the day and just have it. I could watch all TV all day long. Nobody bothered me about homework, which was great because I didn't like to do homework. Somehow managed to do well in school without doing the homework. Interestingly enough, in third grade, I wasn't going to tell this, but Mrs. Sindoni's class in third grade, every day she would hand homework assignments and I would take the homework assignments and shove it in the back of my desk. And then one day she was cleaning out the desk and she saw all the undone homework assignments. I guess she never checked to see if anybody did them. I must have known that and I just never turned them in. But she was pretty upset when she found all the undone homework assignments. And I had to, over one vacation, do a bunch of them. And I didn't do them all. I did some of them because I knew she wasn't going to check those either. Come on, Mrs. Sindoni, or Miss Sindoni. Kind of a surfer chick. Anyway, I was a latchkey kid. Great education in television. I watched I Dream of Jeannie and I watched The Lucy Show and I watched Gilligan's Island and The Munsters and My Favorite Martian and Star Trek and Bewitched and, all these crazy shows, some of which I hated, some of which I liked, but watching shows over and over again teaches you structure of shows. And I became a television writer and I understand the structure of jokes and the structure of shows, and that's by just watching. So thank you, boring childhood, for teaching me how to write jokes and become a TV writer. But I also learned to cook. I also learned to do some hardware stuff and fixing, some light fixing of the house. And the question I want to ask Gary is, was this form of childhood helpful or hurtful? Would I have blossomed differently if I was in a house full of kids or in a neighborhood where people ran outside and played with each other all the time? And, would that have been better for me? What would my life have been like? Would I have become somebody who went into comedy, or would I have become something else? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about. And it is what happened, and I'd like to frame it in a way that sort of can help me grow and become a better version of me now that I am no longer a latchkey kid. But I have all the options that a latchkey kid had. I can still watch TV all day long and make macaroni in the middle of the afternoon as a middle-aged man. So maybe it was just great training for being a middle-aged man. We'll see. Anyway, I look forward to talking about this with our great guest, Gary Gulman.
Don't be alone with Jay Kogan.
Great book. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it. That means so much to me.
No, of course. The thank you section was like 15 pages. What's wrong with you?
When you decide to thank someone, you wind up thinking you can either thank nobody or everybody.
Horrible.
And I just know how it feels when you're left out of a book.
Right.
Like my friend Todd Glass wrote a book,
Sure.
and he mentioned me, and I didn't look first, but at the end, that was like my dessert.
You thank
and
your
it felt
wife,
so good.
and then if you thank anybody else, it doesn't matter.
I know, the next time. But there were so many people who I actually called up to ask questions about our childhood.
Right.
It's set in kindergarten through 12th grade that I felt I needed to recognize.
Well, you
them.
had phone numbers. You had people's phone numbers.
Yeah.
I assumed they were somewhat real. They didn't have to be real, but
I had to change one number legally.
All right. Well, there you
except
go.
that the number I used for the house I grew up in is the actual number because it's no longer in service because my mother moved.
This show is about me bringing smart, interesting people to talk about my problems.
Okay.
That's why I just don't be alone with you.
Yeah.
And the problem I wanted to talk with you about is something that, having read your book, I think you can relate to, which is I feel like, and my parents listen to the show, so maybe they'll tell me to fuck off, but I feel like I was kind of a latchkey kid. That when I came home from school, there was nobody there supervising me, nobody there asking me to do anything, like, when are you doing your homework? Never. I would come home from school, put my ass down on the couch and start watching TV until somebody told me to go to bed. Yeah. so that's what I did.
I identify with that a lot.
So being a latchkey kid primed me for certain things, like being a comedy writer. Sure. I can analyze a sitcom story like that. Like
I've seen so many stories.
A million of them. Yeah. And I watched shows that I hated.
Same.
I hated.
Yeah.
But I watched them anyway.
They were the best of what was on.
Yeah. It was sometimes the only thing that was on. But so I'm going to watch, I hated Bewitched.
Oh, it was awful. I didn't like Bewitched. I didn't like Three's Company used to irritate me with these misunderstandings. I Dream of Jeannie was
things that could be cleared up instantly.
Nauseating. And when
Major Nelson would tell Jeannie, "Don't do the thing," whatever it is, and then she would do it.
Yeah.
I was like,
oh yeah, every single.
How frustrating!
And it would make my blood boil.
Yeah, exactly.
There would be. I also had that situation with that Cat in the Hat, where the cat comes in and these kids and so don't listen to the cat. He's gonna mislead you, and they do, and it's just like that. You made your own bed. Kids.
Easy not to pick up that book, though. I gotta say, it's easy not to pick up the book.
No, that's true.
Yeah. So I was a latchkey kid. You were a latchkey kid. I fended for myself in terms of food.
Yep.
Terrible choices of
Same.
food. I fended for myself in terms of like when I was going to do homework, all that kind of stuff. Do you think that being a latchkey kid made you a better person or a worse person? That's basically my problem. Am I looking back on my childhood thinking that experience, that sort of lazing on the couch, staring at a TV, listening to comedy records, I learned some stuff.
Sure.
But how to wash dishes, do certain things on my own. But I also, so much I didn't learn, and so much I was not guided about. Am I a better person or a worse person now, looking to it?
Oh man, I mean, that one thing I keep thinking is that there was never a better time to have been a latchkey kid.
Right.
I think it would be very dangerous to be a latchkey kid nowadays with all the access to the internet and
what I mean
predators.
Saying I mean, plenty of masturbation happened at home.
Yeah, there was plenty of masturbation, but it also felt like my neighbors were looking out for me, and that there were a lot of kids outside or available, and there were parents who were not working, who I would intersect with and have conversation with, and if I was doing something really dangerous or something horrible happened or I got locked out of the house, I was protected. And the only thing that I think saved me from the worst of being a latchkey kid is that I discovered basketball. So I had this outlet starting in 4th or 5th grade. But when I was a latchkey kid in 2nd or 3rd grade, it was just loneliness
But
and television.
Were you tall in the 4th grade?
Yeah. Yeah, I was always the tallest kid in my class.
So they send you... So basketball's easy.
Yeah,
It's like, we're going to send the tall kid to basketball.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, people
but it was a lonely experience because I was practicing by myself most of the time. Sometimes there would be other kids, but the kids were not into basketball in my neighborhood.
Nobody stared at me and said, "You got to play basketball."
No.
Not one. They looked at me. Competitive eating.
So it's
like hot dog eating contests.
Right, but Jay, it's the loneliness that I'm concerned with for young Jay.
Yes, and I buried that in TV and comedy and food.
Yeah,
and that's what I did. So like I would prepare meals for me and my sister sometimes when she got home, and I would babysit.
How much younger is she?
She's older.
Older.
Yes,
but you would cook for her.
I would cook for her. I also have to stay home for her because she was scared to be home alone.
Yeah.
Even though she was 2.5 years older.
Sure, no,
and so I had to babysit
that.
a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a lot for a kid to be responsible for.
Yeah, but maybe that
age.
responsibility.
But certainly that probably made you a better partner and father.
Right.
I just I fear for the amount of time you spend in your head.
Oh yeah. Well, but I mean, that's the whole thing of it, the anxiety and the sadness and boredom of being alone, you sort of live with, and that festers or generates in you, and then you something comes of it, either comedy careers, or sitting on top of a book depository. But something comes of it.
Right, but that amount of time spending in your head and creating stories and intersecting with so many stories, I'm sure that was beneficial, but it also brings about this reliance on yourself that can also make I don't need anybody, and that's just not true.
Well, you had a different, having read the book. Your dad seemed a lot tougher than my dad.
Oh yeah.
Your dad said he was talking about fights.
Yeah, he wanted me to get into fights.
Yeah,
not run away from the fights that I was running away from. And
right. My father never suggested I get into a fight.
So good.
And so I never, that wasn't even on the table. Like, go fight.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a new special that's Born on Third Base.
Yes.
Yes. I feel like I was born in the owner's box. Honestly.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, because your father was also
my father's a successful comedy writer, kind of rich, but it didn't serve me in any particular way other than like, my food choices at home were much better than yours.
Right.
Much better. They could go to the market and load up on stuff. They were not scrimping, and we didn't have the one Pop-Tart thing going on.
Yeah, I was the beneficiary of a really strong welfare state and government assistance. So my meals were all the free lunch and free breakfast.
That's fantastic. And I see that it has made you stuck to suckling the government teat. That's all you do.
Yeah. But I was wondering, have you seen the Albert Brooks documentary that Rob Reiner did? And it's reminiscent of your childhood.
It is.
And that comedy was front and center in your
It is, and I got to know a lot of comedians and all that kind of stuff. And I spent some time in Massachusetts, in your part of the woods.
I didn't realize that.
My aunt Phyllis, my father's sister, lived in Lexington.
Oh, nice.
And actually died in Peabody.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and there was a retirement home. There's a very nice retirement
Brooksby
community.
Village.
Yes.
That's where my mom lives. That's so funny.
That she was there for a while, so I know a little bit about Peabody.
And Phyllis,
Speaking of Peabody, when you were a kid and you watched Peabody and Sherman, did you go like, aha?
Oh yeah.
We're recognized.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I went to basketball camp and they said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Peabody," and they said, "Do you remember what the name of the boy was on the show?"
Right.
And I said his name was Sherman, and most people think that the boy was Mr. Peabody, and the dog was Sherman. But Fools. But that show was so funny.
Yeah.
And the Rocky and Bullwinkle
Fantastic.
were just so.
Yeah.
I guess it was for kids, but I love it as an adult.
It was
too.
written by adults, for adults, and kids can watch it too.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the reasons on The Simpsons that it's Homer J. Simpson and Bartholomew J. Simpson is because it was Rocket J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle J. Moose.
Yes. I either forgot that I knew that or
I decided I would want to, when they give them middle initial, it should be J.
Oh, I love it.
People said, you're being egotistical. I said, it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about Bullwinkle.
What was the man's name? Jay Ward.
Jay Ward,
yes. And there used to be like a museum of him on Sunset.
There still is a statue of Bullwinkle still there, but they took the bungalows down and sold it for gazillions of dollars.
Oh, man. Yeah, of course.
Money rules.
Yeah.
Money rules. I don't know if you know this, but money rules.
No, I understand.
So the gifts that we may have gotten is figuring out what to do with ourselves, self-soothing sometimes, successfully or unsuccessfully. Anxiety stuff. That's kind of a gift. Figuring out to be in charge of yourself gives that moment of I can be in charge of my life kind of stuff. There wasn't somebody saying, here's your schedule. Do this, do this, do this. We had to do our own schedules.
Yeah.
But we're also just like lost little kids.
Totally.
So I think that's the fucked up part.
Yeah. I mean, I think back on it, and it was a very quiet, lonely house. And, and then when my mom would get home from work, she was tired, and the TV would go on at the loudest level, so she could hear it from whatever room she was in, and then she was on the phone a lot. So it was a very lonely experience. And
your brothers were older.
Yeah, much older, 10 and 13 years older. So that they weren't really like playmates. They were like an extra father and an extra critic, and it was not a great situation for a sensitive boy.
No. I mean, is there a great situation for a sensitive boy? Like, what is the great situation?
Well, every once in a while,
two gay dads.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while, I will witness parent-child relationships. Like, are you familiar with the Brian Koppelman?
Yeah.
Okay, so he and his wife Amy, they have these two great kids, Anna and Sammy, and they're just.
Sammy's a comic too, right?
No, Sammy is he's in politics, so that he wrote speeches for the Biden and Obama and things like that, and then Anna is a writer and comic, and anyhow, I always felt like those kids were comfortable around their parents, telling them things and sharing things with them, and getting that feedback that we needed to go to audiences and elsewhere that we weren't getting it at home. I mean, it's so clear I was starved for attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he seems like when you listen to, he's got a podcast called The Moment.
Yes.
And so when you listen to that and you talk about, like, he seems like he's adopted a lot of people in his life, and they've taken them into their home.
Yes. I was one of those people.
And I always think about, like, I've done that, none of that.
Oh,
like,
really?
I've not adopted a single person. And I think if I told Brown, my wife, like, hey, with a stand-up comic at the Improv that we're going to adopt and bring to our home, she would say, what, you fucking crazy?
It's so interesting.
Well, that's not going to have to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, he is selective,
but
he's very generous in terms of connecting people and embracing.
Well, that's good for him. That's good for him. I don't have any of that. I don't have that largesse. I'm sitting here in my house, and I'm just watching a lot of cable.
Yeah, but you've been so encouraging to me over the years, and took me to dinner with Charlie and Brown. So.
That's just star fucking. No. I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Wow, you need to raise the bar for what you call a star.
No, we're big fans. The family are big fans of yours.
That makes me incredibly happy.
And you're adorable, and people love you. Listen, I have several very tall friends.
Yeah.
And their demeanor, the tallness is belied by your actual inner self.
Oh, okay.
You are still a 5'7".
Oh,
Jew,
yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I identify as 5'6".
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, you can walk into a room tall, but after a conversation, you're stooped over.
No, I know.
It's fine. And so I can relate to you, whereas there are people that I feel like I'm not on the same wave. I told you, I've watched your specials. The Depresh was an amazing special.
Oh, thank you.
And comedians, people in comedy, talk about your comedy because
that's
very
so nice
few
to hear.
people do the kind of sort of set pieces that you've done, the letters, state letters.
Oh, the abbreviating
and the
of the
abbreviations,
states, yeah.
and the one of the fantasy teacher.
Oh, yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Like,
When I was a professor.
They're fully
Oh, thank you.
constructed comedy bits. They're not what is now comedy, which is not bad either, which is more alt comedy observations and people trying to sort of being autobiographical and telling of their own lives, which you do some of too. But I'm just saying, like, a well-crafted bit is something that I just like. Fantastic.
That's so nice to hear.
So, I mean, anybody who hasn't heard the abbreviation, the state abbreviation, you can go to the internet. Has it somewhere. I don't know if you've heard of the internet, but if you've heard of the internet, go to the internet and look up Gary Gulman and look at state abbreviations. It's brilliant. I think you do it on the Conan show.
Yeah, it was on the Conan show, and it changed my entire career trajectory.
Conan's another guy who's a very tall guy who also is a 5'7" guy.
Oh yeah. He's insecure too. It's so interesting, but luckily our insecurity manifests itself in humility and compassion. Whereas sometimes it manifests itself in starting a right-wing anti-vax podcast.
That's true. That's true. I find that kindness. You're both very kind, pleasant people who don't assume people love you or know you or any of that kind of stuff, which a lot of people do. Right. I know a lot of comedians and people might do that. And listen, I have my own podcast, so I'm pretty up there.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, Jake Hogan, do you have your own podcast? When I say yes, it stops the room cold. People go in silence. I assume from respect.
Right.
I assume from respect. Yeah. So, but I don't throw it in people's faces.
Right.
Yeah. That I have a podcast.
Yeah, because of the humility and the compassion.
Exactly. Yes. I try to remain compassionate, even though I'm above all those people. The other thing when reading your book, one of the things that struck me, and I have to take umbrage with you a little bit, is you found the theme from Cheers depressing.
Oh yeah, it always bummed me out.
Now, the theme from Cheers, just so you know, the history of the show, Cheers was a pilot about people in a bar and was almost not picked up, except that they had that theme song. They hired somebody to write a theme song and an opening credits that made it seem like it's not a bunch of depressing people. It's a warm, lovely place where people are friends and everybody knows your name. And that song got the show picked up.
No way. Yes. I never knew that.
So those warm notes of where somebody gotta go where everybody knows your name. Yeah. That's not depressing.
But the opening, which is
soft,
making your way in the world today, takes everything.
That's right.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, and to hear that when I was probably in 5th grade, I was like, oh, it's just a matter of time before the.
Right.
I was always convinced that I would die by my own hand, and it was just a matter of which crisis or undoing would undo me.
Well, let's talk about that.
Whether it was a divorce or a death in the family. I looked at myself as a very fragile soul.
You talk about that a lot. You had suicidal ideation from a very young age.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a latchkey kid. I don't think I thought about it once.
Oh, really?
No. I thought about, like, what am I going to barbecue? and am I going to masturbate again? Can I make a double triple?
Was there any guilt involved with the masturbation? I wasn't sure there was a name for what I was doing, but I was certain that it was frowned upon by God.
Yeah.
That was my whole thing.
Nobody informed me one way or the other about God's thing.
Interesting.
I just assumed that everything we're equipped with was provided by God.
Wow.
So God can just figure out.
That's such a hehealthy attitude.
Figure out, like,
That's a healthy attitude. But I was
waiting to be smited for something. I just didn't know what. And still, I can still be smited.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. At any time. But so when you had these suicidal ideations as a kid, tell anybody? I don't imagine I would tell anybody.
No. I had to keep that to myself and just to avoid the things happening, or pray for the things, pray for life and for my family's life and all these things. So I was just, it was really an OCD type
one of those
situation.
things where I would say I did have thoughts of, like, they'll be sorry I'm gone.
Oh.
Kind of those kind of moments. Like
Yeah.
if I ran away or
Right.
if I died,
Yeah.
it would be like revenge on other people. Like, oh, then they would really feel bad about that.
There was that, which I think is a common, but there was also this feeling that I just felt like if I didn't do something in the way of either sports or to get good grades
Right.
or something like that, that I wasn't going to have a life that I found fulfilling and would make me happy. I was always imagining that someday I would be able to provide an easier life to my mother, who was sort of, if you're the son of a single mom, you become, especially when the other two boys have already really flown the coop, you become like their partner, their husband, and it's just it's a horrible position, and there's so much pressure, and I just felt I owed her a better life, and if I could provide that, then I would feel good about myself. But until then, I was just I was always the other thing is that my father's mother was bipolar, but always so heavily medicated that she was kind of out of it.
Right.
And then he would tell this story of a cousin he had who had attempted suicide. So I thought, I envisioned this type of future was a great possibility.
It's in the pool.
Yeah.
But did you view suicide as a relief from pain?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah.
And by the way, if anybody's listening and having those feelings, please call the suicide hotline, get help.
Yeah.
This is a chemical thing.
It totally is. I used to think it was something I could achieve my way out of.
Right.
And then I read Bruce Springsteen's autobiography, and he struggled with depression and couldn't get out of bed.
Right.
And so there's nobody who worked harder or was more talented or successful than Bruce Springsteen. So it's biological.
Right.
Yes.
Although New Jersey rips the bones from your back. So there's something to that.
It's a death trap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a suicide rap.
Right. So I mean, I get it. Maybe that's part of where he's from. But I mean, that's amazing that you saw that as relief, and also just backing up 4 steps.
Yeah.
Do you now think that you owe your mother a better life?
Well,
Okay, stop. No, you don't.
No.
Right?
No.
I know. I forget you believe.
Yeah.
You do. Part of you believes it.
Yeah.
You don't owe your parents a fucking thing.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't owe your parents a fucking thing.
Wow.
You don't owe your parents. Say it. You don't owe
I
your
don't
parents.
owe my parents a fucking thing.
Right. They brought you here.
Yeah.
You didn't bring them here. Now,
Right.
it's not bad to love your parents and give them gifts if you can, if you want to, but you don't owe it.
Interesting.
You don't owe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really healthy. I mean, I work with that a lot with my therapist, and there's just this idea, I think, that a lot of parents had, that their kids were an extension of them.
But you don't have kids. I have a kid.
Right.
I don't want my kid thinking for 1 second he owes me a thing.
Yeah.
I think I love his company. I love his respect. I'd love
he's a
if he wants to
delightful
be
kid. Yeah.
But he owes me nothing, and I owe my parents nothing.
Right.
And not to say that I don't do a shit ton of work for them, which I do.
Right. Yeah.
But that's because I'm a good guy.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah, we're good sons.
we don't need to.
Yeah.
And if tomorrow I stopped, I wouldn't feel bad about it, because that's just the way. My obligation is to my kid.
Right.
And I have to give him everything I can, because I helped bring him into the world.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's Ozzy's.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like you don't owe people anything. I mean, you had to come here to do my podcast.
No.
Don't get me wrong. That was a must.
Yeah.
You know, I was on you for weeks and months about that. So you had
quo Gulman.
Yeah. But I think that we sometimes build up in our own heads obligations and things that, you know, we think we owe. Now, of course, there's also fantasies of like, I'm going to be so rich and fantastic that I will be able to, I'll have the largesse and help this friend and help that friend, and there'll be the Jay Kogan Foundation, and you know, I'll be giving they'll be giving award dinners for me and all that kind of stuff. But that's bullshit. I mean, the real is you take care of the people who are your family. Yeah. Help as many other people as you can along the way. But that help is like an optional.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I've noticed over the years, and it's a Twain quote, and he has a lot of them, but one that was so helpful to me. He says, "If you want to cheer yourself up, cheer somebody else up."
Yeah.
And I find that people ignore the fact that they'll talk about virtue signaling and all this, but I think we're wired so that being of help and assisting other people and raising people up actually provides us with some dopamine.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Making somebody laugh.
Yes.
Is a huge dopamine getter.
Yes.
I mean, come on, it's like that's like a special skill that you have.
Right.
It's like, okay.
But there's something that the Simpsons has done so well for me personally, the two big things, and one is of course the laughter, but the second is that this type of humor or laughter that you think, well, it makes you feel less alone, that you're not the only person who thinks this way or understands this, and there are moments where I think, and you extrapolate this to the entire planet, where I think, oh, that was just for me. Who else is going to get that joke? And it's such a special connection.
That's true. That if you like a certain kind of joke or a certain kind of comedian, it happened to me when Monty Python. Monty Python. There's a tribe of people who were Monty Python people. There was a tribe of people.
Which came out of nowhere. Right.
It just showed up on public television in the middle of the night. And you'd mention public television, you'd mention Monty Python to somebody else in elementary school, and they go, yes. And they go, okay, that's one of my people. Yeah. So, I guess it 100 years ago was people, doing fill-in or something. But it's Monty Python. Yeah. And that's a tribe of people who are, George Carlinites or loved a certain kind of show, and that kind of, that's a special feeling. Yeah, it's not ubiquitous. Right, it's specific. Yeah, and it's interesting because I find people of my generation, I'm a little older than you, but my generation likes certain Looney Tunes. There's things that we remember that really influenced us that kids today do not have. They have other things. They have the rap music.
Yeah, the rap music, and Rick and Morty seems to be something that they're that is really transcendent, because I live in a mostly African American neighborhood, and the kids and the adults, my wife and I went dressed as Rick and Morty to hand out candy last year, and I've never been more popular in my life. Everybody in the neighborhood wanted to take a picture with Rick and Morty. Right.
Were you Rick or Morty?
I was Rick, and no, I was Morty because I had a yellow T-shirt. Okay. And Sade was Rick.
All right. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree that there's the sense of belonging. Is a very important thing, and you write about this again. You write about this in your book. When you got on teams. Yeah. You had a sense of belonging. Yes. When you met that certain friend group that you had that girl friend who was a girl, who was never your girlfriend. Right. Yeah, Lori. And it's like, okay, I have a connection with this person, and that's a very special thing you take with you. It's like you don't feel alone. Yeah. You can feel connected to somebody, and that can carry you through years of life. It really can. Yeah. It really can. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I was always driven to be a comedian, but I wish I hadn't felt this need to prove that I was not just funny with my friends. I wanted to play the big stage. Why? Why do you wish you didn't have that? Because I always had a track running in my mind. Okay, be funny all the time. That's your superpower. Right. And 2, find out a way to make a living at it, which shouldn't be, or shouldn't have to be, a component of how you want to live your life. That it also has to translate it to earning a living. Can I push back on that? Yeah, of course. I think of course. Yeah. It sounds to me like you're talking about passion. Yeah. It sounds to me like you're talking about passion for something. Yeah. And then why not pour your passion into something like that? Why not make that your living? No, I get that. I just wish. In lieu of what? I guess, will you be a school teacher? Like, what would, and you'd be the funniest school teacher? No, I feel like that I told myself early on that I was, and we talked about this regarding your son with failing, that if I didn't earn a living, it would have been a failure. Just to be, before you, somebody here, I was telling advice to my son, which is, he's in his 20s, about to graduate college. now is the time to fail at things.
Yes.
Meaning now is the time to reach out and
The
try
best
things
advice
and
you can
fail.
give
and
or
fail.
get.
Not that he's a failure.
Right,
Just so
right.
just be very clear. Because it sounded like you're talking about his failings.
Yeah.
He was not. He's not
sorry.
a failure. He's a very,
I assumed
very.
everybody was
it's not
here
your
for
fault.
that.
But I just want to be
Sorry,
clear.
Charlie.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. But I want him to fail at things because he tries so many things that it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
20s is the time to fail.
And you learn so much, and this has been said to death, but from mistakes.
Yes.
The bigger the mistake, the better the lesson.
And you beat people, and it goes packed into the file of life, and you use those lessons for the rest of your life. But what if you weren't trying to be a professional comedian and trying to make your living at it? What would it be? What else would it be?
I mean, the job I enjoyed the most all the years was when I was the building sub at the high school I had attended, and so it was just the perfect timing because a lot of my teachers were still teaching. They were edging towards retirement, and then I was I guess 10 years older than the oldest kids in the school, so I still remembered what it was like to be a high school kids, and it was just a delightful job that I looked forward to doing, and I felt I was pretty good at it.
When I hear you say that, though, it feels to me like Aquaman saying, "I don't want to talk to fish." Like you know what? There are better things for me to do than talk to. It's like, well, no, that's your thing.
Yeah,
explore, use it as good as you can. If you're funny, and you are very funny, use that superpower for good.
Yeah.
You know, all careers are shitty. All careers are struggles. All careers are pain. The building sub has many shitty elements to it. True. And being a school teacher in whatever high school that was, I'm sure has its own problems.
Yes.
All the time.
I agree.
Some administrative nightmare.
Yeah.
So like, okay, but you choose that nightmare or this other one.
Yeah. I just knew that I always wanted an ethical outlet of my personality and my gifts, and that I also studied accounting in college, and I just could not rationalize how this was contributing to my well-being or anyone's well-being. I was not even making rich people richer. I was just keeping track of how much these corporations were spending. It just so I felt like something along the lines of teacher, and then I can twist it so that being a comedian has some ethical manifestation.
I think accountants. I think there's somewhere out there is a passionate accountant who says, I am contributing to the business that I'm helping this business keep track of their business and which is helping to create jobs and provide services and thinking of the long term.
I had a friend who was my boss at the accounting firm, and he went and joined the Peace Corps and used his accounting skills to help developing countries in Europe after the fall of the Soviet Union.
That's amazing. I have a friend who's an accountant for Raytheon, just nuclear bombs, all kinds of weapons that destroy people. He's very proud.
Oh my gosh,
he's very proud.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It's fine. It's good. That's good. It's good. Everybody has their own niche. Some are there to help people who are struggling in struggling countries. Some are there to contribute to horrible weapons of mass destruction. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we pick it. It. I also want to thank you for your book, for informing me, which I never knew, that pattern of gray, that sort of gray pattern that goes on people's coats is called Glen Plaid.
Oh yes,
I had no idea.
Told me about that.
You said Glen Plaid, and I had to go look it up. Like, what the fuck is Glen Plaid? And now it's I've seen Glen Plaid my whole life.
We've seen Glen Plaid
I didn't know it was called. I thought maybe it was called herringbone. I thought it was called something else, but it's called Glen Plaid.
Yeah, I must have learned it in college, or when my brother was in college, because he also had this one suit that he wore to all his interviews, and it was and somebody had said Glen Plaid, either my grandmother or my mother or something like that.
There's a few things in the book that's like that. It's like, also just took me back memory-wise to so many things in my own childhood. I mean, I haven't thought about, and this is probably not your, because you're from Massachusetts and I'm from California. I used to watch a show called Kimba the White Lion.
Oh yeah. That was a little bit before my time.
Speed Racer. Speed Racer and Kimba the White Lion were back to back. I was like,
interesting.
I'm like Gary in that way. I have memories of certain shows that I just watched and watched, including, as we were saying, I Dream of Jeannie and Lucy. There's a whole slew of shows where people are making terrible decisions. And they could have just cleared it up instantly. But they don't. And so now it's nothing but frustration to me.
Have you watched,
Hold on. That's my ride. Gotta go. Hold on.
Todd Glass always makes that same joke.
It's a great
I
joke.
love it.
It's a great joke.
It gets me every time.
It's a great joke.
That's my ride.
Yeah.
So I grew up, my favorite, I was a big Sesame Street kid, and then
Me too.
And then I grew into the Flintstones. Was on at 4:30,
Right.
on the
You
UHF
didn't
station.
migrate to the electric company?
I did love the Electric
Okay,
Company. I
all right.
loved Mr. Rogers,
Sure.
but then my next growth in terms of entertainment
Flintstones.
was for the Flintstones, and I'll watch it occasionally out of comfort, and I just, some of it is actually holds up in terms of jokes, but then other aspects of it in terms of the relationship between Wilma and Fred is just so ugly.
Right. Well, that's the honeymooners.
Yes.
The honeymooners is really ugly.
Yes.
He's threatening to punch her.
Yeah, and violent.
Oh my God.
And he's just cruel. And
I don't understand the relationship between Fred and Barney either. I got to be honest.
Fred is
very strange.
Fred is sadistic and cruel and a terrible friend and petty.
Betty and Barney, like, she's so hot.
Oh, I know.
And he's so not hot. What's going on? Both those women are too hot for their guys.
Right, but the more I learn about relationships, I understand what Betty saw in Barney is that he was easygoing and he was a good listener.
Maybe that's right. Maybe that's right.
Yeah.
That whole thing of beautiful women attracted to really weird looking guys gave me so much hope.
Me too.
Really just like,
Me
okay,
too.
I don't have to be that handsome or handsome at all to attract a gorgeous person. I just have to be something.
Yeah, well, the draw seems to be, at least from what I could tell from watching so much comedy, especially Jewish guys who were of a type, your Gary Shandlings, your David Brenners.
Right.
I thought they all talk about having sex and they all talk about having girlfriends. Being funny is the big draw there. That's the
women.
That's
I worked for Gary Shandling. Women, hot women loved Gary.
Yeah,
loved Gary.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
So you worked with him in It's Gary Shandling Show?
Yes,
or
and It's Gary Shandling Show.
Oh my gosh, that was a revelation to me growing up.
Yeah, no, he was, and he was an amazing guy. And he really, like talking about a mentor. Yeah, he was mentor-ish.
Oh, that's so nice.
To a point.
Right.
Like when I started wanting to be a writer, he was like, "Ugh."
Really?
but like for his show. But he was encouraging me for other shows. But the guy who gets me yogurt shouldn't quite. But,
no way.
Yeah, but he was helpful for many other people to do other things. Yeah, it's fine. I loved Gary, and I'm sad he's gone.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
When I was 13, my mom took me to see the Johnny Carson show, and in Burbank, and Gary Shandling was the guest. He did stand up and then he did panel with Carrie Fisher. Oh wow! And it was unforgettable. Yeah, it was one of the greatest moments. Of my life.
Those shows were very exciting to watch?
So exciting. Yeah. And after the monologue, Johnny would talk to the audience, and it was just, and he would swear, and it was just so exciting.
You take me back to something. When I was a kid, I would go to a soundstage because my dad used to write on the Tonight Show. Yeah. And he wrote on other things. And kids weren't supposed to be allowed in the audience to some of these things. Right. You had to be a certain age.
Yeah. I was supposed to be 16, but I was 5'10".
Right. Yeah. But I was not. But they would give me a pass sometimes, and I would go into the soundstage. It was icy cold.
Yes.
There was a live band playing. Yes. The big curtain, cameras. It felt exciting that there was something about to happen. And then Johnny Carson would come out. They would do a warm up, a little bit of warm up, which was also fun. Yeah. And then Johnny Carson would come out, and there'd be an excitement in the pit of my stomach, like my soul would light up and go like, holy shit, this is amazing. Yes. And that really made me want to be in show business. I just said, I don't know what I'm going to do in show business, but that feeling, that soundstage feeling, I seek out all the time. Still.
No, it's so thrilling. And whenever
that's what phentamine is to me now. So that's what's good.
Yeah, but I just remember that experience, and every time I did Seth Meyers a few weeks ago. There's that excitement, and I think, oh man, imagine. I mean, it would be a bit much to do it every day. Right. It would be overwhelming, but to be a person who it's just so exciting.
But show business seems smaller to me now, and I know part of it is because I was 7, and everything was gigantic.
Yes,
but I just feel like that show business itself, the late night There was one Johnny Carson show.
Right.
Now there's a million shows. There's Seth Meyers. If you don't see Seth Meyers, then Taylor Tomlinson has a new show or something.
Right.
Like there's a lot of shows out there, and so I feel it's all a little bit less than it was.
It was just so much harder to get in and build an audience that I feel like this is a little bit more democratic and a little bit an easier road with still plenty of awful rejection and disappointment, but there more successes.
You know, the rejection is just part of the game.
Yeah,
it's just part of the game.
No,
I didn't know that's the one thing I would tell myself. I was telling my son, if I could tell myself, go back in time and tell young Jay, I would say, just try and get rejected. You know, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just keep trying.
Yeah.
You know, ask that girl that you think is cute. Yeah. Ask her out.
Oh my gosh.
Tell her, have her say no. It's fine.
Yeah.
Then ask
you'll live.
The next
and
you'll live.
Easier to live
and see
with.
what happens. Just try.
Yeah.
But I was so afraid of the rejection that I didn't do it.
And lived a percentage of my life in fear of the rejection and sitting things out.
I have to embrace the rejection. Have to embrace the rejection. Otherwise, there's no life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Question for you.
Yes.
Separate entirely from the Latchkey Kid question. Your word choice of things it's always in your comedy, but also in your book. Just like, how close do you keep the thesaurus next to you? Like it seems like you are a lover of the thesaurus, or just have a vocabulary that's unlimited.
Yeah, I don't think my vocabulary is unlimited, but I'm constantly drenching my brain with words because I read a lot of books and I listen to a lot of books and I keep track of words, and I'm also a writer who's always thinking about what the writing in progress, either for my book or for my comedy, and I think, oh, that's the better word there. And again, another great Twain quote, and I'll probably mess it up, is the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning.
Right.
And so when you get that exact right word, it feels good, it fits, it matches rhythmically. And also there was a friend of mine named Rick Harris who's passed away, but he was a brilliant stand-up and writer, and he went to Emerson, and so he had some training, and he said what we really love to hear is words we forgot we knew, and that was a great help in putting together stand-up, because you could get a laugh just off the word, and surprise is also a big part of writing a good joke. And so when the people forgot they knew it tickles them in a special way.
Yeah, for sure. In the same way, there's nostalgia for some of the things you talk about when you talk about, like, stop, it's hammer time. Like there's if you have a joke that reminds people of a moment. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I will say that you talk a lot about Mark Twain, and who is obviously amazing, but does it hearten you or disturb you to know that Mark Twain died penniless? I mean, to me, it kind of heartens me. Like, even a smart guy like that made such terrible choices.
Same. Yeah. That he couldn't make a good business decision.
No.
And he did not
he
care
spent
about
all his money on weird publishing and strange inventions. He just threw it all away down the toilet.
Yeah, like the equivalent of putting all his money into the Betamax versus the VHS. And so that does hearten me.
Yeah, me too.
And that doesn't matter to his legacy. If anything, it makes it more human. Humane.
If we weren't speaking, if we were speaking another language. Human. What are the 3 greatest gifts you got from being a Latchkey Kid? What are the 3 things that you got?
Oh, okay. Right.
It could be more than 3, but the few of the gifts that you think you were presented with.
I would say a comfort with being alone. We all know people who cannot be alone, and they get very anxious, and they're also likely to be in a bad relationship. So that was helpful. The time to read when the house was quiet and I could read. And then I think sort of this self-reliance, it did build in me some confidence that I didn't feel like and it turns out that I probably could have used some more coddling, but that I didn't need the coddling, that I felt like I was sort of on my own and felt for these kids who came home and their moms were up their asses for the next 3 hours, and have you done your homework and all this other crap, and I felt like I was more mature.
The gifts for me, similarly, I figure out how to spend time alone. I can, I got an education about entertainment and comedy.
Yeah.
And I know exactly how to put together an entertainment system in 1978.
Wow.
I can put the red wire and the black wire, the in and out.
That is a great feeling because it just kept coming. The technology just kept coming.
No, I'm only for that. I can't do the technology now. Yeah.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Only for when 1978. Yeah. I could do like a stereo.
Pong.
Yeah, no, a Pong. I could absolutely do Pong.
Yeah.
And I could pick the input and output, the red wire, the black wire, even the green wire sometimes.
Nice.
I've got it. And often that's a grounding wire, but not always. So I have all that in my quiver.
Yeah.
But I don't, there's so many things I missed out on.
Yeah. And what is your ideal state for within your process of writing? Do you like quiet? Do you like to go for walks?
Well, a couple different things. Things have to gestate a lot, but when you put it down, the first thing I look for is a really noisy cafe or something like that, so that I can drown out the voice that says, "You're horrible.
Oh yeah, that's good.
This is so terrible. Every word you're writing reveals you as a terrible, terrible writer. Talentless. People in this cafe should throw their food at you and chase you out of there." That voice is with me at every word I write as I'm going. So I need to drown out with noise or tricks, and I have to get through it to get to that first draft. And once I get out of the first draft, I can read it again and go like, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. And this is not so bad. And I have something to work with here to improve.
That's such wonderful advice, but also a great relief, because when I started writing my book, simultaneously I was reading or rereading The Grapes of Wrath, and I had a version.
That seems like a terrible thing to
terrible idea,
Let me read
right?
the greatest books of all time, and then begin writing my book.
But I had a version where they talk about John Steinbeck's experience writing it, and have some excerpts from a journal in which he's talking about writing what I consider, if that's not the great American novel, I don't know what is. But anyhow, and he's just beating himself up and saying, if I can put together one worthwhile sentence in this entire book, I'll be grateful.
Yeah.
And then you realize, no matter what level of prowess you get to, or fame or anything, you're going to have these thoughts. So just let them come and realize that they're not going to dissuade you.
I think most people have that inner critic screaming at them most of the time. For some reason, I think Stephen King doesn't have that. Honestly, I believe Stephen King just sits down and goes,
interesting. Yeah. I also read his book or listened to it on writing, and it was really helpful, but I don't remember him having a lot of self-doubt.
His thing is, as you're writing the greatest book of all time, you make sure to have your posture, and your hands should be at the perfect even level.
Just so prolific.
Yeah, he just keeps writing wonderful things, and he's a genius. It's fine. But most everybody else is just scared, and fear drives us so much. We're writing a lot about fear, and we're living in fear, and we'd have to get out of fear and all that stuff. It's just you're fucking lunatic, but I'm a normal guy, and I'm living in fear all the time too. So.
Are you a big reader?
I am. I love books, but I'm a little dyslexic. So it takes me a long time to read. When audiobooks came out, it's like,
I love them.
Thank God.
I love them.
Because I have to, it's a slog for me to go through actual pages and pages and pages of things. But I love audiobooks. I'm oral guy. And so, not O-R-A-L, you idiots. A-U. So when I hear it, it sinks in, and that's why one of the reasons I have decent vocabulary through listening.
Yeah.
And I can do accents through listening.
Same.
Whatever that is, it's working
Yeah.
that part of the brain.
Right.
The
yeah.
reading part of the brain is a mess.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I think the audiobook, some people's, I'm better with nonfiction audio because I like to see the poetry and feel not feel but see it on the page, and also I need extra time to let it settle.
Yeah.
But when I'm listening for information or words, I find the audible really
It's
helpful.
very helpful. When I'm reading like scripts and things,
Yeah.
I will routinely not fall asleep, but just zone out.
Yeah.
I
Oh, me
will
too.
Zone out and just
Me
like
too.
what? And
Yeah.
I'll be 20 pages
Yeah.
beyond some point I
Yeah.
remember, and
Yeah.
I have to go back and read it again. And that's
Yeah.
something's going on there that's wrong.
Well, the only thing I will say is that you get better at it. Your attention lasts longer, but that's very common amongst people, especially writers. When
Yeah.
when you're reading, you're thinking and
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
We said the 3 great things that we got.
Yeah.
What are the 3 things that you wish you didn't have?
You spend so much time lonely,
Yeah.
and it's not the entire time that you're lonely, because a lot of times I was involved in hobbies or
Right.
basketball or doing things that were productive or constructive, but I do also have a sadness that is started in that
Right.
period of time where I didn't have a lot of friends or,
Right.
or any real friends,
Right.
and it made me feel sad and longing and feel depressed,
Right.
and so that
But
was
you write about you had friends, but they weren't good friends.
right.
And
yeah.
and that's depressing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it's
I
really
had friends.
depressing that. Yeah,
I
that-
had friends, and I was kind of depressed anyway. Sometimes, you know.
that it was frequently fraught when
Yeah.
I was with these people, and there's also for little kids, there's competition for friends.
Yeah.
and so this friend, I remember a kid down the street. I would get a friend, and he was really great at picking them off. Man, he would steal them. He was offering more than I could I could provide, and then,
Right. Well, yeah,
in
it's-
terms of toys and
Yeah.
and the swimming pool, and it was just it could be very sad.
Yeah.
So
I
would
had
feel
a swimming pool. I had
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, really?
But I just didn't.
I would feel left
I
out.
wasn't aware that there was a competition going on.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I could have lured people
so-
in.
yeah.
But I was also in a neighborhood where everybody had a swimming pool.
Right.
I mean, we're in the San
Okay.
Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
You know, like most people had
Yeah.
swimming pool or access to one pretty darn easily.
Right. This kid, he really stood out for his swimming pool.
Well, this has been helpful to me.
Okay,
I am
good.
going to reconsider my childhood, and if mom and dad are listening, I don't blame you for being very young people. They were young 30s.
Okay.
Dad was working and mom was going out, and they were having a good time. They were very
Interesting.
They were
Did you get the feeling that your parents enjoyed you?
yes.
Because that's kind of a new concept. Like, I think my dad enjoyed me. I think my mother had her moments, but for the most part, I was sort of a bit of a burden.
Well, you were work for her.
Yeah,
for
I was
sure.
work for her. Yeah,
I mean, and also she seemed pretty, burnt out. Like she's
Yeah.
doing a lot of things a lot of the
Yeah,
time. I mean,
yeah.
it's not. She didn't have the bandwidth to
Exactly.
handle all
Yeah.
that stuff. You know,
Yeah.
that I understand. When I read your book, I felt for your mom, not
Yeah.
just you,
Yeah.
but I also felt for
Yeah.
your mom because things were difficult.
Yeah.
But I think my parents enjoyed, but I also worked hard to make them enjoy me. In other
Yes,
words, I was
I get
like,
it, yeah.
I was a little entertainer,
Right,
You
me
know,
too.
mama's boy,
And a good boy.
to
Yeah.
do the things they liked.
Yeah.
And when my sister would say, "I'm not going to have," we'd go to a fancy restaurant. "I'm not going to have any of the fancy food." And I would say, "No, I'm going to eat exactly what they give me, and it's like, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to compliment the food."
I love it.
Like it was a complete asshole. And my sister was honest and true to herself. She was a much
Right.
better person.
Interesting.
Yeah. But she's dead now, and I'm alive. So
I'm
who
sorry.
wins?
What was her name?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
No, her name Jill.
Oh.
Jill. Yeah, it's a lovely woman, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry she's gone.
Oh, that's sad.
We were good friends when we got older. Not good
that's
friends when we were kids.
Right. Oh, that's so nice.
This is the part of the section of the show where we do listener mail.
Oh, fun.
Charlie has written a theme for listener mail.
Now it's time for listener mail.
Oh,
I love it.
It's adorable.
Charlie.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
Charlie. And this question comes from, there are two here. One is from Ed Matthews, who says, "Can you reason with someone who's mentally ill? Could it be that they are normal and believe that they are trying to reason with you, who is actually the one who's mentally ill? Ah, interesting. So with somebody, when you're talking to somebody and their perception of reality and your perception of reality are different, how do you come to a meeting of the minds, or do you just, I'm out of here?
Yeah, I think that's the healthier version.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with mental illness is there are a number of different things. So you could have an argument with a depressed person.
Right.
You may not be able to argue them into thinking that their world, that their life is so great, or something like that. But you can have a factual argument. But there are certain people who are either in such a level of denial or delusion that probably the best option is to be polite and
people think
extricate yourself.
People think they can talk people out of depression or talk people
out
of...
I know.
Insanity.
And it's just there are different levels, so that talk therapy is helpful at a certain level, but then you get to a level where a medical intervention is necessary.
But I mean, you say, but what are you so upset about? Look at all the great things in your life. It's like, fuck you. My brain is telling me that things are not good, and I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like a very natural thing, and you can't explain away somebody's emotions and feelings, and especially when it's chemically induced.
And it's cruel to try.
I have come to that. It took me a long time to come to that, when I had friends who have committed suicide and other things, to realize that it's not like, well, what was the thing? It's like, well, there's no thing.
Right.
It's a disease that captured people and took them out like cancer.
Yes.
And so, like, well, you're going to argue somebody out of cancer?
Right.
No.
I know.
I wish I could. But this also just people who are divergent or having not depression necessarily, but just a different sense of reality. I feel like this way with Trumpers, I guess, which is like they have a different sense of the world, a different sense of what's crazy, and different sense of what the problem is. And they have a bubble of information that reinforces it, just like I have my bubble of information that reinforces my idea, and I won't be able to talk them out of it. And they can't talk me out of my thing. The only thing we can do is find common ground somewhere. Right? I can say, like, well, you want people to not be dying in the streets, right? And they go, okay, great. Me too. I don't want people dying in the streets. So maybe the healthcare system, we can figure something out for the healthcare system to figure it out. I understand that people abuse the system, and I don't like that. I'm not for that, but we can figure something out. Or you want people not to starve, but we want people. Let's agree on the things we can agree. Public school used to be like a thing. Everybody agreed that public school was a great idea. I think a lot of people don't think that anymore. They think private school is a much better idea. It's like, well, no, public school is a great idea still. I want to find the people I have common ground with, and I think we can do that. I don't know. The next question, I talked way over you. I completely talked over you. No.
I'm comfortable with it.
I know. This one is from Holly, who says, and this is a very interesting question because I know this person. I do a thing on Twitter still called Philosophy Fridays.
Oh, okay.
Where I have a philosophy question and people come and answer the philosophy. She's one of the people who's there every Friday.
Oh, amazing.
And her thing is, how do you develop your sense of self, and what facets define your identity? And that seems like a very basic question. Like, how do you develop your sense of self? So how did you develop your sense of self?
It's a very difficult question for me, which anytime I try to read deeply in philosophy always trips me up, that idea of being and metaphysics and
why does it
things like that.
What?
Because they use the same term for the idea of being as they use for instance, they'll interchange metaphysics or ontology or these things, and it doesn't always seem clear which aspect they're talking about. One of the better books I've read on philosophy was by Michael Schur, who kind of he I wouldn't say he dumbed it down, but he made it.
He tried to sort of boil it down to like, here are the three schools of philosophy.
And it was more understandable. And so my sense of self, I'll tell you, my gut reaction to that is that I know who I am better than I ever have, and I still don't feel I know who I am that much. And I saw a film, and the director was there, and he had written it in the 1960s, and I can't remember the name. It was black and white, and he said it was an utter failure. And this man was 96 looking back on this film, and we watched it at the film forum in the village, and we were all blown. It was breathtaking, blown away, and it was breathtaking. And he said this was a failure that moved me into becoming a professor rather than a director of film. And he was watching it, and he said, what I see in this star of this movie is that this is a man who doesn't know himself. And I'm looking at it now at 97, and I realize I probably don't know myself much more than I did when I wrote and directed this movie about a person who doesn't know himself. And so I think there are certain things that I want to leave behind in terms of just that I didn't make things worse for a lot of people, that I was giving and thoughtful and tried to share my gifts, and that I was generous with my time and my blessings. But that's not a sense of self.
But I mean, you are a comedian, you are a person, you're a husband.
Yeah.
You know, you have your identity.
Yeah.
Your identity,
I mean,
your son. There are things that are given things about who you are now. You identify yourself as a mama's boy. You identify yourself as that's who you, those are all parts of who you are. Yeah. And there's never going to be 100% of who you are. But if I wanted to sort of caricature, boil you down to certain things, you probably could. And I could boil myself down to a certain amount of things and just say, okay, I get who, Nepo baby, chubby Nepo baby who, spent too much time in comedy club, failed at stand-up comedy, so he had to become a writer, kind of person, like that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about this last night in terms of I started texting my wife. She's in New York right now, and I'm in LA, so she was up late, thank goodness. And I was just realizing in our talks that she's really the only one who knows 100% of me, and that we don't keep any secrets from each other, and I tell her things from my life that I'm ashamed of or embarrassed by, and it's just and it's plenty, and I feel so good about that.
So she could say who you are. Yeah, she could identify. Yeah,
she could say who I am. And I was just saying last night, I said, I'm so happy right now, and she said, well, you deserve that. And it was just it was the ultimate response to I'm so happy right now, because it is something that you have to remind yourself that you do deserve to feel good. Well,
I would modify that. I think I don't know that anybody deserves anything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But why not?
Yeah.
But I mean, look, why not be happy? And how great it is that you feel happy. So because I think that, a lot of people deserve a lot of things that they don't get.
Yeah.
But happiness, that you're in a joyous moment is fantastic. Yeah. And you should enjoy it free of guilt. Of being happy, to truly say, I earned a lot of this happiness. I worked at it, and I know happiness won't last forever. So why not?
Yeah, this
ride
too
the wave.
Shall pass, right?
Yeah, ride the wave. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So did we answer this person? Did we answer Holly's question?
No, there's no answer to this question. How do you develop your sense of self? How you develop your sense of self is to live your life and see what works and see what doesn't.
Accepting the good and the bad has been very, very helpful. That
working maybe change.
And sometimes what you think is the bad is the good. Like I used to hate myself for being so weepy and soft, and it's one of the better part of me as an adult male. And
we can grow and fix things that we want to change and keep the things that we think our humanity relies on. And by the way, being a soft touch in terms of emotion, crying at commercials, which I do all the time, is easy. That commercial with the three ladies going down the hill.
Oh my gosh, it gets me every single time.
Me too. It's like, oh my God, that's fabulous.
Yeah. Oh, what a beautiful commercial.
And it'll only cost $1 gazillion. Yeah, but it's worth it.
But they're going sledding as elderly women, and it's just joy.
And then they revert back to their inner child's with them all the time. Yeah. Fantastic message. I'm with them the whole way. Yeah, that's great.
Mr. Rogers had this great quote where he said, the child is in me still, and sometimes not so still.
Now, I'm Mr. Rogers. I was one of the things where I did not like Mr. Rogers.
Oh, really?
I did not.
Him.
I hated him.
Really?
Yeah, I hated him. No, I like him now as an adult,
Yeah.
but at the time I felt
Yeah.
he was talking so slowly.
Oh, interesting.
And down to me in
Interesting.
many ways. Like, I was a
he's known
precocious
for every
kid.
Precocious kid, yeah.
I was a precocious kid. Like,
Yeah.
you, dude.
Yeah, I just saw
Step
him
up your game.
as a relief from the men in my life who talked fast, abrasively,
Right.
and impatiently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was good with I like him now as an adult. I
Yeah.
respect what he did,
Right,
but I also
yeah.
just I
Yeah.
was not entertained by there's certain shows
It's not
that
for
were
everybody.
for like Barney or something. That was like
Oh,
I wouldn't
forget it.
shoot myself.
Yeah. Well, I always found Barney. I could see through that. It seemed phony.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas Mr. Rogers, and it took many decades for it to play out. You're like, oh no, this guy was the real deal.
Right, but the
Yeah.
land of make believe was a little creepy. Let's be honest.
There's a comedian in Boston named Mike Donovan who has one sentence that I think of every time I think of the land of make believe, and he would say, quote, and he's doing a Mr. Rogers impression. He says, "Let's go to the land of make believe where it's ridiculously obvious that I do all the puppet voice."
Right. Yeah. I think I was too old for it. I think this is a show meant for 3-year-olds.
For 3-year-olds,
and I'm watching it like at 14.
Yeah.
You know, probably this is not for me.
You're not the target audience.
No, but I mean, I was that latchkey that I'm really,
Right.
I'm desperately searching
There's
all the
something
channels.
on. There's something on.
Using all of the Buffalo. Anything
Yeah.
that was on, I'm going to try and see. All right. The last thing we do on our show is moment of joy.
A moment of joy.
What's something that is in your life now that gives you joy?
I play basketball nearly every day, usually in the morning, and I don't improve drastically, but I notice small improvements. Things get easier, and it just while I'm doing it, and it's still exercise. So in the morning, like, I don't feel like playing basketball today, but I feel so much joy, and there's some pride there when I notice myself improving, and it was something that I abandoned for a long time, and coming back to it, rediscovering it has been another source of joy.
Do you play when you're on the road?
Yeah, I bring a basketball. I deflate it, which is this brilliant maneuver that I hadn't thought about.
Right.
And then I deflate it, and then I pump it up when I get to my destination.
You bring a pump too?
Yeah, I bring a pump, a small pump, and a needle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you find a park.
Yeah, I find a park. So I play frequently at Pan Pacific Park on Beverly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have fans stalking you at Pan Pacific Park.
I've been telling people I go there for years, and nobody ever shows up. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good moment of joy. Now, will you, as you age, as you get older, there comes a time. My dad was a basketball player. Played basketball all the time.
Wow.
Not every day, but every weekend.
Amazing.
Played basketball, and he had the Kogan hook.
I'd love to hear that. Oh, that's awesome.
And he hasn't played basketball. He's about to turn 90. He hasn't played basketball in a good, I don't know, maybe 20 years.
Oh.
He misses it.
Yeah.
He misses it. I wonder, like, if after basketball, what you can fill your life with after basketball. I mean, you don't have to decide now.
Right. Interesting. But there does need to be something to fill it.
Right.
I mean, my wife and I like to go on hikes, so maybe that could be something like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I hike around here. You could go and hike with me and Lou.
No, there's great hiking around here.
Lou Schneider, a mutual friend, and I were hiking just the other day and talking about you. He was just before he came to your show.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, so he was good. And when I told Brown that you were in town, she said, why didn't we go to the show? It's because we're lazy assholes. But it's
next time I'll be back. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's your moment of joy. My moment of joy, which I normally don't give myself a moment of joy, but my moment of joy is seeing you.
Oh,
I really like.
Oh, that
I
makes
miss
me
you.
So happy.
And this excuse to have you on the show was also an excuse just to see you.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
That was really nice.
It would be we would be killing two birds with one stone.
Exactly.
But,
and because you eat, vegan food.
Yeah.
And I don't mostly.
Oh, okay.
I have non-food.
But you go to vegan-friendly restaurants frequently, and you did accompany me to Real Food Daily.
And I ate there
before a show.
I'll always give it a try.
And
the more I see about how horrible factory farming is and all that, the more I want to be.
The thing is even if you did it for a meal or a day a week, it would improve the climate and also your health.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to eat healthier, more plant-based things.
Yeah.
And more tin. More tin-based things. I'm not great with health. Yeah. More tin. Metals.
I did not expect
Yeah,
that.
more metals.
So you're heavy metals.
Yeah, just more metals. It's interesting for the teeth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being
Thank
here.
you
I
for
really
having me.
appreciate
This was
it.
delightful. I'm so glad we got
fantastic.
to catch up. Yeah.
You're the best. So Gary
Oh,
Gulman,
thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Gary
you.
Gulman.
Thank you.
Yes. No, nobody's applauding. You don't hear it. I know. It's in your head.
Maybe in their driveway.
Okay.
Don't be alone with Jay Kogan.
I want to thank Gary Gulman for talking me down off the ledge of being a Latchkey kid. It was very helpful, very informative. He is a very, very, very funny, but more than that, a good person and a good friend. And I really appreciate him being here. I want to thank you, listeners. Don't be aloners. Is that what we're calling ourselves? I want to thank you, Don't Be Aloners, for watching and listening to the podcast. Please send me your questions, especially questions for guests, at dbawjk@gmail.com. I would appreciate that. And remember, there's a great big world out there waiting for you. So don't be alone. Get out there and be part of it. I'll see you next time.
Don't be alone.